Welcome everybody to Nimbin Herbs, another lovely afternoon in Nimbin, and today we have got Dr. Jamie Rickcord from Ananda Clinics in Byron Bay. Jamie is one of the Australian doctors working on the front lines of medical cannabis. During a recent visit to attend the Medican conference in Nimbin, we interviewed Jamie about some of the complex issues involved in the medicalisation of cannabis and other entheogens. Following decades of prohibition, we asked how the medical profession is responding to the rollout of medical cannabis and whether the current medical paradigm is being disrupted.
I think so. Brings it all to the surface, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many opinions and ways to look at it, you know, and it's as complex as humans. One of the things I've noticed is with other doctors, you know, their patients get better and they send more. Which is great.
So referrals from other doctors.
Yeah. People come along, they get better, and then they're like, okay, well that's the evidence I need, and they send more people. Others see them get better, and I don't know, their ego kicks in or something, and they get even more angry about this bloke prescribing CBD, you know. So it is disruptive. It's very disruptive.
Yeah.
But it sort of needs to happen.
And well, I guess the hard wiring of prohibition would definitely have caused some trauma to some people, in as much as it's very difficult to backtrack.
Yeah.
Like, you know, it's, you know, we still have black helicopters flying over this area.
Yeah.
Most recently is just a few weeks ago.
Yeah. So
you've still got, you know, within government and law enforcement, definitely people that are still very much on the prohibition kick.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a fascinating rollout indeed to see things become sort of legitimised through medicine.
Yeah, and I think that's a challenging concept for the medical model, that we can give people medicines that actually make them feel good, you know. That's kind of...
That's outrageous as well,
radical, isn't it? But primarily, I see the medicalisation as people understanding that it's a medicine and it's nature's medicine. And I think the more that permeates the mainstream, the better things are going to get.
Yeah, understood. So in just bouncing further away from cannabis, definitely other plant medicines are now emerging as potential therapies that are acceptable.
That's, I think, the genius of MAPS and Johns Hopkins and Imperial. They've taken their system and given it back to them. Here you go, there's your model, and look, it's safe and works better than what you're doing. So that's very smart. So the tables have turned.
It's only taken decades.
It's only, 750 years, I think. 375 AD is when the Eleusinian temples were torn down.
Right.
And that was the last time psychedelic medicine was acceptable in Western society, not indigenous cultures, but in, you know, it was early Christian. So that medical model requires trained people, much like, you know, psychotherapy, naturopathy, acupuncture. People have to be trained to deliver the therapies, and that's the society we live in. So this movement is training people to do that, and whether or not they're suited to it or they'll be any good at it, you know, that's for the medicines to decide, I think. But that's all going to come out in the wash as well. But I think the process of legalisation, the fact that, you know, plants we can all grow in our gardens, whether that's mushrooms or cannabis plants or vines, you know, these are nature's medicines that have the power to profoundly heal us, and we shouldn't necessarily need to enter a medical model to have access to ourselves. We are nature too, and I'm part of this movement because I want that to happen. It might take 20 years, but, you know, people should have the choice to use natural medicines that we have. You know, our body's full of compounds that are basically identical to nature. That's the message that's starting to get through, you know. People are like, oh, right, okay, well, we'll move on from that, you know. And it's a rabbit hole, and who knows. Well, it's probably going to get ugly for a while, I think. You know, I think there's going to be problems. I think, but I think in the long run, you know, humanity will be better off for it.
Yeah. So when you're sort of saying there might be some problems and a rabbit hole, do you mean like really sorting out who's going to make money from it?
Yes.
And who's going to, like for instance, I guess who's going to control the production of certain drugs as well?
Yeah.
Because when it comes to herbal medicines, as we know, we do have the ability to do that ourselves, grow ourselves and make our own tinctures or whatever. But when it comes to something like MDMA, of course, we cannot just make those things. That needs to be made in a laboratory somewhere. So, all these different, I guess, psychedelics or entheogens or even the plant medicines all have different ways in which they come into being. And, who has the resources or whatever to control them. Yeah.
It's a tough question. I mean, there's lots of great organisations around the world that are non-for-profits. Hopefully they'll start making medicines that are off patent. And I think, there will be people, people who come in for profit, who want to pay shareholders. But really, I think, this has to be done in a different way. And I think there's lots of us who will do it in a different way. Yeah. And then that will hopefully just shine a light on all the shitty behaviour that will come with it, and they'll have to adapt because people will try and do it for the benefit of people and community. Yeah,
because I guess even as the underground has evolved, the psychedelic underground, in the last 50, 60, 70 years, definitely there's been huge amounts of bad behaviour as well as amazing behaviour. Yeah. And a lot of the models that people have really chanced upon have been indeed harking back to Indigenous use.
Yes.
Or something as simple as, dance.
Yeah.
So the whole dance party movement, rave scene, that was in some ways a modern model to participate in MDMA or LSD or whatever it is. And they're really effective models for a lot of people as well.
Well, there's that famous story from the UK that when the rave started up north, all the football hooliganism stopped. Yeah. And it did. They were all fighting each other, and then they went into a warehouse and took ecstasy together, and they're all mates, and it ended. And that the medicine did that. Community did that. So that's kind of an example of the power that they have. There's that famous quote: if you went to see a medicine person in the past, the first questions they ask you are, when did you stop singing? When did you stop dancing? When did you stop being enchanted by story? And when did you stop enjoying the sweet territory of silence?
Wow. So just recently the Australian government announced that they were going to sink like $15 million or something into research into psychedelic therapies. What opportunities do you see in that kind of research grant announcement for practitioners such as yourself on the ground?
For a lot of practitioners, nothing will change. The bigger institutions will move in on the research, university-based. And I think a lot of that is about building experience, really. The data's already there. It's already been done. But we haven't done it in this country. Yeah. So whatever experience people may have from their own life or their travels, the actual art of using these medicines hasn't been done in a clinical framework. And I think the research allows people to start building that experience, because there are risks if they just let it go now. That I don't know. I think we need to be a bit cleverer about it. It's actually an enormous victory, and I think the Australian government is the first in the world to actually fund psychedelic research, which says a lot about our government. Lots of people
it says a lot about our government having some of their good mates not feeling so well and have had some great experiences with psychedelic therapies. Yeah. So it's handy if you've got friends in high places. Training has begun in Australia on psychedelic assisted therapy. We were mentioning that before. And so, when will people have access? Because you probably don't have access to substances necessarily. So, do you have any idea on how long that might be going to take in the current environment?
I don't think it will be that long. A couple of years. I think.
Okay.
Yeah, a couple of years.
Not decades.
No. It's going to happen. It's going to happen quite rapidly, really, in the grand scheme of things.
One thing we've noticed just in, I guess, underground psychedelics is there is a propensity sometimes for the messiah complex to emerge, especially when people think they are the shaman or the healers. Yeah. So, do you think that kind of thing may also happen within the mainstream world?
Well, I get a bit fed up with this kind of, illegal versus legal, whatever it is. There's cowboys in both. But it's up to humans to be discerning. It's up to the people to be discerning and spot them and not support them. Yeah. And that, that's about people being empowered. And again, that's another radical shift away from the current medical model, which is hand your power over to someone else to fix you.
Yeah.
But I think with this work, Jung had it right that we can only take people as far as we've been ourselves. And I think that's the most important part. And I think if you're unaware of your trauma, then you shouldn't be in that room. And how we make people aware of their trauma, that's still the question. But that, I think, is the most essential part. It's actually one of the things I'm most fascinated by is this idea that these medicines heal us, and that's it. And it's not true. This kind of ego reinforcement, I'm a shaman or a healer, or I can do this, or I need to tell the truth. People get in trouble because of it. So just to say, I'll take this medicine, drink this medicine, whatever it is, and I'm going to be good, it actually leads to, it can lead to spiritual narcissism and a fairly good dose of spiritual bypassing as well. But it needs to be talked about.
Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon.
My pleasure. And, thanks for having me.
I'm actually really excited you're in the neighbourhood and that we can, keep seeing how things unfold in the next few years.
Yeah, it's going to be a roller coaster.
Yeah,
that's what it's going to be.
Lysergic acid, the active principle of the sacred Mexican mushroom, psilocybin.